100 engineers, outworked by a single swarm of AI agents inside Meta, and the setup behind it is just Markdown files and cron jobs. That receipt comes from the man who runs Meta's Superintelligence Lab himself, Alexandr Wang, the founder. Mark Zuckerberg paid $14.3 billion to bring in on the Y Combinator stage days ago. By the end of this video, you'll have the exact anatomy of that swarm, the loop, the metric, the files, plus the one resource he says is about to become scarce, and the exponential he'd tell his 18-year-old self to bet everything on. We watched all 32 minutes and fact checked the wild claims. Moment one is the swarm.
We've seen internally at Meta cases where if you can develop the right agentic loop and you have the right eval or the right metric for the agents to optimize, you can have a swarm of agents accomplish more than like a team of 100 engineers in, very, very handily, actually. Very, very.
Quick context, because the source matters. That's Alexandr Wang. He founded Scale AI at 19, and last year, Meta paid $14.3 billion for 49% of it, mostly to put him in charge of Meta Superintelligence Labs. He's on stage with Garry Tan, the president of Y Combinator at the same startup school where Jensen Huang and the creator of Claude Code spoke. We've broken down both talks, links below. The full talk is linked too. Here's what most people will scroll past. Moment 1. Garry asks him for alpha, the applications people haven't figured out yet. Wang doesn't name an app. He describes a loop and then drops the internal receipt that made this whole video. Listen.
I mean, I think there's still just like astronomical opportunity in agentic looping and figuring out how you develop systems that enable you to spend like 1,000x more or 1 millionx more on tokens to drive an outcome in a continuous feedback loop. Like if you think about most companies are just these like large-scale feedback loops where humans are operating each of the edges. Like, companies, they get customers and they figure out how to make those customers happier. And if the customers are happier, then they spend more. And if they spend more, then you can hire more people who can then go figure out how to get more customers and make those customers happier. And that's like this, that in some sense is the feedback loop of every startup or every business. And, within that, there are micro feedback loops that exist. And I think developing agentic systems that can operate and optimize these feedback loops there's like just huge amounts of alpha there. Like I think we've seen internally at Meta cases where if you can develop the right agentic loop and you have the right eval or the right metric for the agents to optimize, you can have a swarm of agents accomplish more than like a team of 100 engineers in, very, very handily, actually, very, very easily. And so I think figuring out what the world looks like with lots of sort of this like, these agentic coordination problems, I think that is like one of the most interesting problems today.
So mechanically speaking, I mean, Markdown files, cron jobs, is it that, and then basically pointing the agent at enough data so that it can figure something out that, maybe isn't in distribution.
Yeah, I think like figuring out, mechanically figuring out what the metric is, and then it just comes down to skills, Markdown files, cron jobs.
/goal.
Yeah, /goal. Like I think it's always funny how mundane everything is once you really dig into it. But
so it's not magic, some people put a lot of magic. There's like some LinkedIn threads out there about some magic stuff.
Top advice: ignore LinkedIn.
Hey,
LinkedIn is where you get customers.
Read the anatomy back, because it's 3 parts. A metric, the eval that defines what better means. A loop, agents that keep optimizing that metric. And fuel, he's saying spend 1,000 times more tokens on an outcome, because tokens are now cheaper than engineers. The part that should stop you, the creator of Claude Code stood on this exact stage days earlier and said, verification is the single most important thing people get wrong. Wang just independently named the same thing, the eval. as the difference between a swarm that beats 100 engineers and a pile of API bills. And both men, unprompted, gave the same warning: ignore the LinkedIn gurus. The mechanics are mundane: skills, markdown files, cron jobs. The moat is choosing the metric. Moment 2. If a swarm can do the work of 100 engineers, what happens to the oldest rule in startups? That you're David and the incumbent is Goliath. Wang says that whole frame is dead.
When I started Scale, or 10 years ago, if you started a company, you had to be, it was like David versus Goliath, and you had to be clever, and you had to find like an angle into the market, and you had to sort of like figure out a way to compete, even though you had much fewer resources. And now I actually think with the power of agents and AI broadly speaking, it's much closer to Goliath versus Goliath. Like I think, but maybe the startup is like a Mecha-Goliath that is like vastly enhanced by the power of agents and AI, and the large companies are the sort of like more traditional Goliath, so to speak. But I think that startups now, like if you properly embrace AI agents and figure out the way to leverage their strengths in the most like ambitious ways, you can easily outcompete incumbents.
10 years ago, a startup won by being clever in the cracks. Wang's claim is that agents delete the resource gap itself. The incumbent has 100 engineers, and you just watched what replaces them. What the incumbent can't copy is speed of conviction. A two-person team that embraces agents fully is, in his words, a Mecha-Goliath. That word is your free PDF keyword later, by the way. Moment 3 is why the window is open right now. Moment 3. This is the line the title of the talk comes from, and everyone will quote it. Almost everyone will miss what he says right before it, the part that's actually the business plan.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're at this like amazing moment in the world where the bottleneck is not the progress of the AI models. The bottleneck is diffusing that through the rest of the world and helping the world adapt to this amazing technology that already exists. Like I think if the models didn't improve at all from today, there would still be like decades and decades of like total upheaval and change in the economy and how the world operates and everything around us. And so I think it's, as a result, it's like one of the most incredible, it's probably a like once in a civilization opportunity to be a dreamer and to have a vision and to have ambition and to impose a view of how the future world should look by building something amazing.
The bottleneck is diffusion, not intelligence. That's the same product overhang argument the creator of Claude Code made about coding tools, scaled to the whole economy. Even a frozen model would take decades to absorb. For a builder that removes the scariest dependency, you don't need to predict the next breakthrough. You need to carry what already exists into one industry that hasn't adapted yet. Every year, the models run ahead of the world. The gap you can build in gets wider. Moment 4, the money moment. Garry says he ran Meta's new Spark model inside his own agent harness and found it as good as Opus for agent work at a fraction of the price. Watch Wang's answer, because it's a pricing philosophy, not a flex.
I mean, it sounds like one of the ways, I mean, certainly when I was using MuseSpark with my OpenClaw, like it became clear that it was as good as Opus, especially for that sort of agentic flow with skill files, but it was like 8x cheaper, actually.
Yes. Well, I think this goes to it. Like we don't believe in a world where these models are so expensive that they get rationed only for the most wealthy of developers and companies. It's important for everyone to be able to use the technology to and to build whatever they want. And I think I have one last thing I gotta say.
Yes.
Yes, which is Meta is proud to offer everyone in this room $1,000 of free credits for the MuseSpark API.
Fantastic.
And and we're going to keep making the models better. And right now, MuseSpark is, I think, 8x cheaper than Opus. So if you convert that to Opus dollars, it's a lot more. But no, everyone here will work to get everyone the details on how to get these credits, and we're really excited to see what everyone builds.
We checked the 8x claim against both published price lists because he's very much selling his own model here, and it doesn't hold. Spark 1.1 costs $1.25 per million input tokens against Opus at $5. That's 4x, not 8. Output is 5.9x. Even Zuckerberg pitches it as roughly a quarter of what Anthropic and OpenAI charge, 4x. So, rounded up on stage, direction real. And the $1,000 of credits was a stage announcement for that room. The public offer is $20, so don't go hunting. But zoom out, because this is the same story we've tracked all month across DeepSeek and Kimi. Frontier class tokens keep getting cheaper. And cheap tokens are exactly what make the 1000x token spend from moment one rational. The swarm strategy only works in a world of cheap tokens. And every lab is now racing to build that world. If this video is useful, hit subscribe because it's free. And if you want to back the work, hit join here or the supporter button on Facebook. Now, the next 10x wave. Moment 5. Where should you actually build? Wang gives a pattern he's watched for a decade from inside the data supply chain. Every AI wave is 10 times bigger than the last one. And he says the biggest products still don't exist.
I think the best AI products haven't even been developed yet. If you look at the AI ecosystem and everything that's happened, like every wave is 10 times bigger than the past wave. So, when I started Scale, the first wave was maybe self-driving cars. Self-driving cars are really awesome. They're like really, really cool. But that was like pales in comparison to large language models and chatbots. And chatbots became this thing that was like probably 10 times bigger even than self-driving cars. And then there were coding agents, which came a few years later. And coding agents are probably 10 times bigger than chatbots. And I think we're just on this steep curve. Like, we're going to keep seeing these new modalities and form factors and developments of the AI paradigm that will each be dramatically bigger than the last. And so, our point of view is like, let's unleash the ecosystem, let's explore, and let's see, let's build, kind of the future of the world.
Yeah, I know the harness is, under wraps still, but like, can you tease us with, I still use OpenClaw, I still use Hermes Agent. It's, these things are, I call them Ferraris that break down on the side of the road all the time. Like, is this a Ferrari that won't break down? Like, tease us a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't break down. I mean, I think we're really focused on speed. I think speed is, for anyone that uses these tools, speed is probably one of the most critical things. I think also reliability, like you mentioned, we want to be extremely reliable. We want to be very extensible and to scale to as complex and interesting of a multi-agent setup that you want to have. Like, I think there's so much innovation that will occur even above the harness, frankly, in terms of like how to orchestrate and set up loops and develop very complex ecosystems of these agents working together. We want to be really extensible.
2 signals in one exchange. First, Meta is about to ship its own coding harness, aimed at speed, reliability, and complex multi-agent setups, which means the harness wars just got a third giant. But catch the more useful sentence. Wang says the innovation will happen above the harness, in how you orchestrate loops and ecosystems of agents. That's the layer nobody owns yet. The harnesses are becoming Ferraris. The open question is, who designs the races? If you've been waiting for a wave with no incumbents, he just pointed at it. Moment 6. Play the tape forward. If intelligence gets abundant and swarms get cheap, what is the thing that stays scarce? His answer decides what you should be practicing this year.
I think a decade looking back, it'll be obvious that intelligence became abundant and that agency became abundant. Like, the current trends we're on are just going to keep continuing. And this will be very strange. That's going to change. Like, all of a sudden, the scarce resource isn't going to be intelligence or agency. I really think it's going to be vision and ambition. It's like, do you have a clear view of what you want the world to look like in the future? What is the one way in which you want to put your finger on the scale for how the future of the world will develop, and how how the world will look like in 5 to 10 years that it does not look like today, and you have the ambition and drive to like go through all the crap to make that happen, and AI will make that easier. Like agents and AI makes that maybe 10 times or 100 times easier than it was a decade ago. But the flip side of that is then all of a sudden you can dream bigger. Like when I started a company back in my day, we wrote code. And now, I'm sure nobody here writes code anymore. That's ridiculous. But now it's about how do you orchestrate the agents together? And then it's like, how do you develop these organizations of agents? Like, how do you get like 1 million agents to work together well? And then it'll be, how do you get like 1 trillion agents to work together well? Like, I think that there's going to be this continued need to figure out how you structure workflows at the abstraction layer that we're going to be operating at. And that form of like rigorous systematic thinking, I mean, traditionally the way this would work, like in my era of starting companies, is you would start by writing code, and then you would have organizations of humans, and you'd figure out how to organize those humans. And that required systems thinking. And now maybe it's like much closer to first you orchestrate the agent, then you figure out how to orchestrate like these armies of agents. But I think systems thinking is never going to go out of style. So I think it's definitely a mistake to go all in on word cell. Like I think you need to shape rotate.
Here's the third cross receipt of this series. Jensen Huang stood on the same stage and said coding was never the durable skill. Systems thinking was. Boris Cherny said the job became designing verifiable loops. Then Wang adds the ladder. Code, then agents, then armies of agents. And the skill that survives every rung is structuring how the pieces work together. 3 people running 3 different frontier operations independently in 1 week. So no, don't stop learning to think in systems because AI writes the code. And word cell versus shape rotator is internet slang for talkers versus builders. His warning is don't become a prompt poet. Keep building. Last moment. Garry closes with the classic. What would you telegram your 18-year-old self? Wang's answer is 2 instructions, and the second one is the most concrete investing advice in the whole talk.
What would you send in a message in a bottle to the 18-year-old version of yourself right now?
Yeah, I think it really boils down to develop your own internal compass for how you think the future will develop and have strong conviction in it, because you will get inundated with noise and people telling you shit, and like you'll be very confusing and it'll be very hard. And especially when you're young and you don't have experiences, like it can feel very difficult to have true conviction in what you believe and what you want to do. But I think that's the most important thing. Kind of as we talked about, it took a deep conviction in what we were building to be able to weather the sort of storms of many years of chaos in the market, in the industry, and the people around us. And so, and then the other piece of advice I would have is try to identify what is the exponential in the world that has both the steepest curve and will go the longest. And many decades ago, this curve was Moore's law. And that probably was, that was at the time, like clearly the right thing to invest on. I think right now it's AI progress, but there will be more of these very steep curves in the future. And it's fine if these curves start, the starting point is very boring, or like it doesn't even seem that interesting. Like when I started working on scale, we had cat detectors in YouTube videos, and that felt, it's hard to explain the story that that's like the most important technology of our time, but it was on just this like unbelievable exponential.
2 instructions. Build an internal compass, your own model of how the future unfolds, because the noise never stops and consensus arrives years too late to profit from. And then find the exponential that's both steepest and longest, and get on it early, even while it still looks like a toy. Scale A. I started as cat detectors in YouTube videos. The compass tells you which curve. Conviction keeps you on it while everyone calls it boring. He's telling you the curve for this decade is the one you're already standing next to. 7 moments. A swarm of agents with the right eval beat 100 engineers inside Meta. And the mechanics are skills, Markdown files, and Cron jobs. Startups are now Mecha-Goliaths. Agents deleted the resource gap. The bottleneck is diffusion, not model progress. That gap is the business plan. Tokens are racing toward cheap, which is what makes 1000x token spending rational. Every wave is 10 times bigger, and the layer above the harness is unclaimed. When intelligence is abundant, vision and systems thinking are what stay scarce. And the telegram. Build your compass, find the steepest, longest exponential, and hold on. We condensed this into the Mecha-Goliath brief, a free PDF with every quote timestamped to the full talk, the swarm loop anatomy as a build checklist, the pricing math we verified, and the conviction moments that didn't fit this video. Comment the word Goliath on this video and our assistant sends it over. Or grab it at hyperautomationlabs.co/free/Goliath. Real talk. 90% of you watching haven't subscribed. On Facebook, subscribe is the supporter button. That is what keeps the lights on here. On YouTube, it's free and it tells the algorithm to send you more. Subscribe to support us. If you're starting out with AI coding tools, the beginner guides are linked below. The complete Claude code guide, the Codex guide, the Cowork sales guide, and the architect prep kit, step by step from zero. The Jensen Huang and Claude Code creator breakdowns from the same stage are linked below too. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram as Hyperautomation Labs. Same name everywhere. And this week, before you hire anyone, try writing one eval and pointing a loop at it. See you in the next one.